Right, oh, so it's just not cricket, or it is just cricket. One day we'll have the answer to one of those questions. We're on episode 4 of our podcast, Jamie. Did you think we'd ever get this far?
There was a time when we first started, 4 weeks ago, that I was hoping we'd get to this episode, so I could title
Mm.
it Episode 4 of Them, after Mikey Holdings' great commentary line.
Yes, 4 more. Lovely. But yeah, it's going well. Are you enjoying the podcast series as one of the hosts?
Yeah, I'm alright, yeah. It's been fun, hasn't it?
It's been fun. I've been enjoying it. It's good times. Segue though, in good times. England aren't good times, are they?
Uh, and that's the podcast for this week.
And that's a podcast. I mean, our little itinerary today. So we didn't have city points last week, but I thought we would jump straight into city points this week. The main city point being the ECB or England cricket. So England today, it was a foregone conclusion really, but they lost by 10 wickets to West Indies. Some scores on the doors for you, Jamie. England got 204 in their first innings. Saved really after being about 100 for 8 by Jack Leach and Saki Mahmood, putting on about 70 plus for the last wicket. West Indies got 297. There was an amazing 100 by Joshua Da Silva. Did you manage to see much of it?
I don't think so. There was a point during the West Indies second innings,
Hmm.
and most of today that I couldn't watch. Like,
Yeah, I mean it's kind of England points, isn't there, where you watch it is like a car crash. Sometimes you want it, you can't, you're transfixed. I think like there was a point when Scott Boland got about 8 for 5 or something in the Ashes, when you just couldn't look away. It was horrendous. West Indies batting innings was a bit obviously slow, but obviously when England collapsed yesterday to 120, well, in the end 120 all out, their collapse last night was just absolutely calamitous. And obviously West Indies knocked off the 28 runs needed today quite easily. But I just bring up Joshua Da Silva quite quickly because, yeah, the emotion of him getting that 100 was just quite nice to watch, really. It obviously meant so much to him. He couldn't really hold back the tears at some point. It obviously was such a hard fought out innings. It just reminds you how tough Test cricket is, and that, you know, you've got to have good mettle and, you know, a good mindset and preparation and play well and play with a straight bat and leave well and actually be patient to get a really good Test match innings. So then you have England, who are 120 all out, and the top scorer being Alex Lees, 31. And then you go Zach 8, Root 5, Dan 0, Ben 4, an absolute calamitous shambles, which, you know, the England coaching staff. Trescothick came out yesterday. I've got a lot of time for Marcus Trescothick, the batting coach, but he came out yesterday to say, "Oh, we've had one bad day this series."
oh, fuck off.
I mean,
Oh,
I mean, I think it's one bad day over the last 18 months, to be honest, Marcus. And I mean, they're saying one bad day in this tour, but lest we forget, and I mean, if it hadn't been for Johnny Bairstow in that first test, we were 40 for 4 on that first day. Even in this test, what were we? We were, yeah, like I said, about 90 for 8, 108 in that first innings. Sorry, 114 for 9 in that first innings. So I think that was probably quite a bad day. I think as well as Leachy and Saki batted, you shouldn't be relying on your number 10 or number 11 to scrape you over 200. So I think that was probably quite a bad day as well.
like, what can you say at this point with it? Like, before we go properly into how shit England were, like,
Yeah.
fair play to Windies. Like, Myers was
Oh, absolutely.
incredible. Like, Seals, Joseph, Roach, all of the bowlers did bits. And we were kind of criticising Craig Brathwaite for how he batted in the last game to get his 100. Like, it was still a great knock, but it's kind of
Sure.
similar to how De Silva played this innings. And, like, the modern keeper in Test matches, we're inclined to think they're a bit more aggressive, you know, like Pants.
Exactly.
We've had Butler and Bairstow attempting to do that. But Josh Da Silva just stuck in. He stuck in with the tail and
Yeah.
just made sure there was extra runs on the board when it was looking like the first innings scores would actually be kind of level. But he just pushed it on to give Windies such a big advantage after that first innings.
Massively, massively. And he was getting so much stick as well. I think on the evening of the day too, Stokes was really going hard at him, like sledging wise. I think there was a lot of calls about how slowly he was batting, all that kind of stuff. Really wasn't pushing the game along. They were going nowhere. And obviously he ends up getting 100 and winning a game. And then contrasting that to Bairstow, who's played about 80 odd tests, he was batting a bit slow, and then Joshua Da Silva gave him a little bit chirp saying he was batting slowly, and then he goes for a massive hawk across the line and gets caught behind. I mean, it's just, there's no handling of pressure in this England team whatsoever. As soon as their backs against the wall, up goes the white flag. The mentality is that they've given up. And I think it's quite interesting. I read somewhere earlier, if the first two tests had been flipped around and we were batting to save the game, would this just be a 1-0 series loss, or would it be 3?
Oh, God, no.
Would we have just capitulated in those last innings trying to save the game? You know, like, I think it's a valid point.
Yeah, no, I can't see any of the top order, maybe Root or... I mean, I say that, but this game, both Root and Stokes just absolutely copped it as well. So you can't even say that our two most reliable batsmen would have handled those game situations in the previous two tests, because you just can't tell at this minute. There is just something wrong inherently with the structure, with the mentality of the players, the coaches, like whether it's that sort of bullshit propaganda that they keep coming out with, we've had only one bad day in the tour, or Root said after the first test, we made good steps in this test match. Like, have they just started to believe their own bullshit at this point?
No, I agree. I mean, one of the things, a lot of the talk that came out today was a lot of media talk. I mean, I always feel from an England fan always feels the last person who matters in all of this stuff anyway. It's all about, we need to come back and do better. But I think of all these people who've spent so much money to go to the West Indies and watch a lot of these games. And this is the drivel that they're having to go and watch. I mean, Test cricket, we always keep hearing, is the pinnacle of the game. But in the end, people are going to be like, why am I going to spend, when it comes back to England, why am I going to spend 80 plus quid on a ticket to go and watch this?
Think about the poor old West Indies board who didn't get their full 5 days.
Oh yeah, that'd be absolutely livid. But yeah, I think that all that kind of stuff is probably a topic for another day, and tickets and stuff and fans. It's always the last thing on the agenda, of course. But the only thing out of Root's stuff that came out this evening was when he was saying what was the positives from the series. And he was saying that he thought the attitude throughout the whole thing has been brilliant, in his words. In that respect, we've definitely made big improvements, and that has to continue. And then contrasting that, when he was interviewed by the BBC by Jonathan Agnew, he wouldn't be drawn on any kind of Jimmy Anderson, Stuart Broad stuff. So does this kind of lend more into the kind of vicious rumours stuff that they probably dropped Jimmy and Broad because they were too difficult to handle? And I think the same maybe could be said with David Milan, people who might come out and actually speak their mind.
I mean, as soon as you said that, I was thinking Roots just said that to spite Jimmy and Broad. It's like, nah, it's fine. We might be losing, but we're having a much better time now. So that's all that matters, as long as you're having fun.
Yeah, that's the vibe I get. I don't think it's a fun thing to say. So finish off by saying there are so many good things to take away from this. Of course, we came here to win, and we've not, and that's frustrating. It's disappointing. But if we're going to keep learning and keep growing as a team, and if we're going to start winning, then we've got to keep that approach. Man alive.
You know what's really fun?
Go on.
Fucking winning. Having your best team out, your best players working together, whether you fucking like them or not as people.
Yeah.
And winning under immense pressure, which the England team are always fucking under.
And also Paul Collingwood, who's obviously not going to stay on as coach, but he said the one thing you do notice is that in the dressing room is that the team are together and they're right behind Joe. It just feels, from an outside perspective, this I think in any other line of work and any other line of sport, if a team, in context, obviously England have won one test match in their last 17, I think is the stat.
Mm-hmm.
And even before that, they won a great win, I think, first test in India away, but obviously went on to lose that series. They won 2 against Sri Lanka, who were woefully unprepared for that test series. Like, Don Best got 5 for 20 on the first day, and I think 3 of those wickets were full tosses. And then obviously before that, they had the 1-0 win against Pakistan at home during the pandemic, and they came back to win 2-1 v West Indies. It's just going on for ages, and it's just they've not been good for a long time. And like I said, in any other line of sport, any other line of work, if something's been this bad for this long, something fundamentally needs to change. And I don't see how just changing the coach or Ashley Giles at the top makes any ounce of difference, because this team is basically, bar 2 or 3 other players, the same team that went to the Ashes. It's the same team that's been playing for the last 12 months. Paul Collingwood's instead of Chris Silverwood. I like Collingwood, but he is basically Silverwood Mark II. There's no change in this vague Red Bull reset. I did a little tweet from our account the other day saying you can't just say Red Bull reset and then suddenly everything changes. It's the same. We've batted on 2 flatties in the first couple of games. We've managed to get runs against bowling machines, and then we come onto a pitch that does something and we can't do anything. And that's the same story that's been the story for the last, I'm going to say, 5 years, maybe.
I mean, could you not say since we were test number 1?
Probably, yeah. Since Andrew Strauss retired, maybe.
Yeah, exactly. And like, Red Bull Reset just sounds like a massive social media hype tool. It just sounds like a hashtag.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that will gain massive traction on their own Twitter, and that's fine because they're getting good engagement. It doesn't matter about the results as long as you're getting likes and retweets and shares. That's what cricket's really about.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, absolutely. It's exhausting as an England fan, I think, just to see the same old stuff. And I also think, I don't know if this is a controversial take, I don't think it's all rosy in all the setups, if I'm perfectly honest. Like, you always go here about, Red Bull's crap and stuff, but at least we're good at white ball. Recently, whisper it, are we that good at white ball? Like, we just lost the T20 series against West Indies. We lost that 3-2. We didn't make the finals of the World T20, which I think, if we're this great white ball team, I think that's definitely not a good step, really. I think for if they're as good as we believe they are, I don't think that's too good. Obviously, there was a great win with the reserves against Pakistan, which were 3-0, but we lost away to India in the T20s and ODIs, lost at home to Australia before that in the one-day series. I don't think everything is as rosy as everyone thinks it is, because obviously we won the World Cup in 2019, but it's now 2022, and it's like, I'm trying to think, when was our last win, in any form?
Yeah, no, I think we built up to win that World Cup so much, there wasn't any plan after. That really should have been, in hindsight, Morgan's last game as England captain, as
I think so.
Part of the England setup. He goes out on a high and England can reset and do a cycle for the next ODI World Cup and the T20 World Cup just gone, which we bottled. And we're basically relying on Butler for massive scores in like a few of the last games there, and you can't just, like in the test team where we're mostly relying on Root to score runs, and when he doesn't, we're fucked. When Butler didn't score those big runs in the T20s, also fucked. It seems like a problem that is pervasive throughout each format. I don't know whether that's within the ECB, whether it's in the players and coaches camp, or it's probably both. It's probably just a lot of everything, and that all just piles on each other.
Because we also had that vagueness of like Roy being suspended for 2 games, whatever that statement meant. But that was obviously from within the camp or something, I'm guessing, if he's being banned for 2. I don't know. From the vibe, from an England fan perspective, it's great to see them in a one-day game smash it all over parts, but has it been that good in a while, Obviously, I think we had a few really good games in the World Cup, where we pumped Australia and things like that, but don't know, I don't think it's all rosy on the white ball other side. I think, as a whole, England cricket's got a problem. I think it's got a very bad. Obviously, you've got all the Azim Rafiq stuff as well. I think there's a lot of bad stuff over the face of England cricket, and it doesn't make me happy to be an England cricket fan. Which is why we started this podcast to really rave about our favourite sport of cricket.
I thought we started so we could rip on England.
True, it's also a good point. But yeah, I mean, I only ever talk about this stuff because I want England to do well. I want England to win. And it's just frustrating to not see that for the last goodness knows many years. And it feels like we're just going to be living off that World Cup win and that Ben Stokes innings for the rest of time. But hey-ho. The big difficult questions I'm going to pose to you, Jamie, as the key decision maker in the ECB now. I've just appointed you to that role.
Great. I'm going to sort this shit out.
Good. Does Joseph Root stay captain of this England team?
Well, no. But you have to really question who else there is. Like that, I'm not saying don't strip Root of the captaincy just because there's no one else good enough to be captain. You still have to get rid of him because he looks like he's just mentally checked out as well.
He's gone. Yeah.
Like, it's just the whole weight of that has just completely drowned him, and he just needs to be a batter now. But then who do you select otherwise? Do you just go Stokes because that's easy because he's vice captain? I don't personally see him as a captain or a leader. I see him as a sort of talismanic player that thrives in the pressure of the moment rather than the pressure of captaincy. And has he really captained, say, Durham or much of England in the past? Not
really at all. I mean, he captained, one test match against West Indies, and then they obviously captained that in kind of famous 3-0 win against Pakistan at home last summer. And then one thing I will say about Stokes is that I do feel like he's a leader within the dressing room for sure. I think he definitely rallies a team. He definitely drags England through it. But whether he's captain is definitely a big question. He's also finding his way back into the team and form and general mental well-being as well, I think. So another baggage of being captain as well is that really what's needed for him?
Yeah,
I don't know, but I feel like, Root winning one game in the last 17, Stokes being captain is not going to do as bad as that, or is not going to do any worse than that, is he?
I mean, what much are you changing? You've gone from your captain to your vice captain, who
true, yeah, good point.
He's got to be as much a part of the problem as Root is. He's part of that same setup. If you get rid of your captain, you have to look at what your vice captain has been offering as well. Has he been pushing Root's objectives as well? Has he been pushing back? If he's been behind the scenes going against Root a bit more, or going against the coaching or whatever, and being overruled because he's just the vice captain, then maybe there's something for him. But I just don't see him as a captain of England. And then like, other options just aren't viable. Like, I would have thought Mo would have been a decent shout, at least short term. In the current team, like, there's, in the team that played today, the only other shout is probably Bairstow, and that's just hilarious to even think about. And then you're thinking, because we've bowled so poorly, we've got to bring at least one of Broad or Anderson back. And then the most experienced players in the team, do either of those get captain? And, like, you risk the apocalypse happening, or do you just completely tear up the script and go, nah, we've had folks for a test series, but you're not long term. Bring in Billings and just say your keeper, your captain, that's your specialist position, your specialist captain. Like, it's just really difficult to pick who takes over from Root, and someone should be taking over from Root realistically. For sure.
Yeah. I think you've hit now had a lot of those, because there's a lot of problems, like you say, especially with Jimmy and Broad coming back in, because there's been a lot of noise about Broad being potential captain. But then you've got the added issue of Broad then would have to play every game, which I can't see happening that much. Bairstow, again, has never captained before, was only brought back into the side 4 or 5 tests ago.
I've just thought of a really, really fun one. If he's ever back from injury, Jofra, I can. It's as like weird and out of the box as it sounds. I can kind of see him being a decent tactical captain. Like one of the big problems with Jofra is that Root overbowls him literally to injury. And I can't imagine Jofra doing that to himself. I can imagine he'd
potentially
manage the bowlers a bit better because he's been mismanaged. And if I think there's
maybe
a thought in cricket that bowlers are not as viable.
But then you look at Pat Cummins.
Yeah, exactly.
Pat Cummins is yeah.
So
we also got Jasper Brummer as vice captain of India as well.
Yeah, right. So screw it. I'm gonna go Jofra. Why not?
You're gonna go Jofra. Okay, fine. I mean, I don't think anyone would have ever said that. So that can be our headline for this podcast. That Jofra Archer is England's new Test match captain. Yeah, I mean, fair enough. I mean, I think there's something within the kind of youthfulness of Jofra and, you know, the desire to really succeed at the highest level. I get, yeah, for sure. I think personally, I'm of the camp where you tear everything up and start again. I think you could look at someone like a Sam Billings or a Tom Abel of Somerset to come in as a specialist captain who can take off the pressure from a Root or a Stokes. They can just focus on their game and then they can be the technical nous and chip in and stuff. I mean, I don't think he's particularly great or anything, but you look at maybe something like Tim Payne, really rebuilt Australia from after sandpaper. The way he helped, you know, bring them back to where they are now number one in the world again. And obviously he wasn't Australia's number one keeper, but he was in the team probably because at that time he was their best captain. So I think there's some credit in that for sure. I don't think they'll go down that route. I think it's very likely Root stays on.
I can't see them. It's either going to stay as Root or just go to Stokes because they don't.
Yeah, it would be Root or Stokes. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think probably more 50-50 than I'm probably giving it credit for. I think the way Root was completely shot in this game, like just gone mentally, and I think that's the most jaded I've seen him as captain, even after the Ashes. I think yesterday is probably one of the worst days of the winter for sure. It's not good, I think, in a basic nutshell. It's not a fun time. And it's just again, I think it's just a shame, and I don't really know where we go from here. I think someone like Sam Billings, just going back to Billings for a second, I think it's frustrating that he's gone to the IPL. I mean, who am I to talk that, you know, you get offered a lucrative white ball contract and earn loads of money playing some of the best players in the world. But I just think there was an opportunity for him to take his name out of the IPL hat, go back to Kent, and he's not played a lot of pre-season Kent for the last few years with the IPL. I think there was a real opportunity for him to go back, play 4 or 5 games before June, rack up some runs, really put a stamp down as the captain, and really put pressure on to be in this team. I think that would have been a big kind of point from him personally. It feels nonsense to say Sam Billings as Test captain after last year, but I don't know. I feel when bases in this team are so much up for grabs and so much for grabs for a captain as well, I don't know, I would have quite liked to see that. But hey-ho, he's off at the IPL, and, you know, I think Mumbai Indians lost today, but I think Calcutta Knight Riders won yesterday with Bilbo in the team. So at the end of the day, that's why we play the game, that's why we love the game.
I mean, it's just such a dire position to be in that we're considering Billings, who's played 1 Test match, to be a potential captain. Tom Abel, who's not played any Test matches.
And he's a decent player in his own right, but I don't think he's a Test match batsman.
Yeah, and then someone saying something ridiculous like Jofra Archer should be captain.
Who would say that? I don't know. Yeah, I think Root keeps it. Or on the flip side, it'll be Stokes takes it, and someone like a Zach Crawley or a Dan Lawrence will be a vice captain. That's the only thing I can see happening.
I can kind of see Crawley getting the vice captaincy now, like going the Joe Root road. Like Stokes becomes the cook card, and Crawley becomes the Joe Root, and then when Stokes gives it up because we're doing shit still, you just give it to Crawley, and then Crawley will give it to vice captaincy to, I don't know.
Who knows?
Probably Dom Sibley. I don't.
Speaking of which, I think we'll quickly do one last thing on the state of English cricket before we move on. What do you? Obviously, we've got to get a new managing director, which is going to take a lot from the sounds of it. There's been some names that have been bobbing about, such as Rob Key, Mark Nicholas, Ed Smith, who was previously national selector before Ashley Giles fired him last year, but apparently he's back in the running for managing director. For managing director role, coach-wise, Justin Langer's still popping about. So, do you have any kind of thoughts about you want to take over those roles? If after we talked about Root as captain, do you have anyone kind of in an admin perspective you'd like to see come in?
I mean, none of the names you've mentioned for director or national selector ever, because that just gives off the impression it's a big boys' club. It's all mates picking mates, unless you're Strauss dropping two of your mates.
Yeah,
I think we need someone like a Justin Langer or a Ricky Ponting to come in. Like we keep saying it's so bad that we're considering X, but we're looking at or potentially wanting some Australians to come in and sort out English cricket.
Yeah.
But like saying
dire
that,
straits.
Like it would be amazing if you had like Langer and Ponting and.
Never happened. That I can't see it happening. I mean, there was another name as well that I read. There was Mike Hesson, who was New Zealand coach between 2012 and 2018, who they asked to do an interview for the managing director role, and he turned it down. So if you've already got people you're already trying to scout out, and they don't want to even do it, even if you ask them just to come, they don't even have to apply, and you're asking them to come along and do an interview, they're never going to get someone like Ponting.
No, I mean, did you send me the link for the job application?
I did, yeah.
So we can put that in the episode description, and then people can just apply.
If you think you can do it, have a go. I think another one is Marcus North is another person they're looking at. He's currently, I think he's chairman or director of Durham at the moment. I don't know. I feel like ECB are always going to want someone who's going to play to their tune.
None of those names give you any confidence that things will actually change.
No. And final thing about England's dire straits. Do you have any kind of? I mean, it's impossible to say. You just lost the game, but is there anyone in particular you would like to see take to the field on, I think, June 2nd, when England play New Zealand at Lord's? Is there anyone you think deserves a recall or a debut, or just a general shape of that lineup? Do you think people from this tour keep their place? Who loses their place? I'm asking you about 8 different questions here, but I'm asking you to answer in one go, so over to you.
Well, I think of this team, I think Crawley, Root, Stokes, Leach, Mahmood are the only ones that have done anything to deserve any kind of keeping their place. Folks potentially to come in the team, like that would mean 5 or 6 players need to come into the team. I'm always gonna, until he completely just capitulates, I'm gonna hold a flag for Hamid. I think him and Crawley would be a decent opening partnership once they've got a run of games together. Like there is good technique in both of those players. There are good players in them that you just need to mould properly with decent coaching. Like we talk about the players camp being a bit questionable, but if they're not in an environment to nurture their talent, then they're never going to flourish at all. And these are two decent players that we're just going to waste. I mean, in the batting, like another one of my crazy picks after Jofra captain, I want Livingston. I don't care. I want Livingston to come in and be our Rishabh Pant.
Yeah.
I don't care if he's never played a test. I don't care if he's never played a test match. It's just kind of how modern test cricket is evolving. Like, some people might not like that it's going a bit closer to white ball in that sense, but it's one player that comes in middle order, puts their emphasis on the game. Either they take it away from the opposition or they're out playing a silly shot. I mean, if he's out playing a silly shot, then he'll fit right in anyway.
What difference? Yeah, honestly, what difference is it going to make? You know.
And then I always think bowlers, you should have maybe like 3 definite set bowlers that you pick, and then like 1 horse for the course, depending on the surface. But I think we've got a good selection of bowlers like Leach, Mahmood, Jimmy, Broadwood, Jofra, Stone, Parkinson. Like, there's a solid selection there. Why we keep playing like Wokes and Overton? They're basically the same bowlers.
They are pretty much exactly the same bowler, for sure.
And Robinson as well.
Robinson has quite a lot of issues. That fitness thing, I don't know what's going on there, but we shall see. I mean, fundamentally, I think the problems go so much deeper than who's going to open the batting in June with English cricket. There's so much issues, so many issues. But I think, you know, there's a lot of things. I mean, I'll probably give Lees another game. You know, I mean, I don't think he's. Why not? I mean, he looked as solid as anyone last night.
I don't. No, I don't think you can, Matt. Like, we've tried. We've gone from Sibley to Lees. They're basically the same player.
For sure. No, definitely. I agree. I mean, at this stage, I don't. You drop Lees for Sibley, you drop Sibley for Hamid, and Hamid for Lee. It's just. I think it's a never-ending cycle. I don't know. I agree. I think someone like Livingston needs to come in, or that kind of calibre of player, to take the team by storm. Same way kind of like KP did, or like Pant is doing, you know, or Warner did when he first came into the Australia team, to really take the aggression to the bowlers. I mean, they wanted that with Roy, and Roy didn't work, but I think someone in the middle order makes more sense. But we will see. We will see how that goes. I look forward to England announcing an unchanged 11 on the 2nd of June from their last test against West Indies. Right. I feel like we all go too depressing if we keep on going with England. So we'll go on some other cricket news. I don't think I've got any kind of Papua New Guinea stuff. Or if you've got any Papua New Guinea stuff. I
mean, they just won the ODI series against Nepal. I don't think I can. I don't know how that's not the thing everyone's talking about in the cricketing world.
Yeah. And they've got a T20 series that starts tomorrow against Nepal. So tune in for that one. But yeah, IPL started, but you know, okay. I think the most important news, really, which I think deserves a lot of talk, is that England have qualified for the semi-finals of the the Women's World Cup, and they've done so they've finished 3rd in the end, finishing on 8 points. So the 4 teams that qualify will be Australia, who didn't lose a game, South Africa, England, and West Indies, meaning that India are out. It was a ridiculous game yesterday. So India set South Africa. So obviously if India won this, they would have qualified. South Africa already through, so it was a massive, massive game for India. So they set South Africa 274 to win, and literally South Africa did it on the last ball. Mad scenes. So they needed 7 from the last over. This World Cup, man, is just not. I mean, I wish it was a more reasonable time, because every game just seems to go right down to the wire. It's a real avocation for like 50 over cricket as well.
It seems like either it goes right down to the last ball, or one team is just absolutely smashing the other.
Yeah.
Like England,
usually Australia v someone else.
Yeah, I mean, England completely destroyed Bangladesh and Pakistan in the last 2 games.
Absolutely. So I think that's I think it's a massive win also for England yesterday, because that means that England, like I said, England finished third, and that means they play South Africa. So they don't play Australia in the semis. So we can now lose to Australia in the final instead, and the final sounds better than semis. But I don't know. I think, yeah, West Indies got there by the skin of their teeth. So it's great for West Indies to get through to semis. But once again, I can't really see anyone other than Australia winning this. But yeah, I'm quite excited to see what happens. I think the semis on Thursday. So potentially by the time we next record, it will be maybe all over or close to all over. But yeah, in the end, I think England got home into the knockouts quite easily, especially after losing their first 3 games to go on to win their last 4.
Literally, they did the reverse of India. Like, India, they won their first 3 and then just lost since.
Yeah, India started really strongly, yeah, from memory, yeah, definitely.
Like, the South Africa-England semi should be really interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think so. Hugely. It's because, yeah, those two, England are on the up. South Africa have only lost the 1 game. I can't remember when South Africa lost their only game.
It would have been Australia, wouldn't it?
Yeah, or it might have been a no result, potentially. That might ring a bell. But yeah, South Africa have done great this. Yeah, it was no result. Oh, and a loss, sorry. But yeah, South Africa have done really well this competition. I think England definitely would have really not looked too fondly about their first 3 results, especially after the Ashes as well. I think a lot of questions would have been asked. I mean, I was sort of thinking they might not make it through. Maybe a lot of their players like Catherine Brunt and Amrit Shobshol maybe looking over their shoulders a bit. Maybe it's one World Cup too far. But no, here we are. And anything can happen in knockout games.
I mean, that's how you put questions and bad starts to bed. Like, you just you set that aside. You step up and you turn it around, and it's with hard work and a proper game plan. And it seems like it's the opposite of the men's.
For sure. Yeah, absolutely. There is a great video online as well. I'll definitely say check it out from West Indies cricket Twitter of the reaction of when South Africa obviously beat India and West Indies realised that they're going to go through into the knockouts, and you just see them going absolutely crazy. I love to see that in any sport, but just that kind of excitement reaction, they're going to make it through. It's just great. I love to see it. But yeah, so next knockout, first knockout, should I say? So I think that is Thursday. I think that will be the South Africa England game, and then it'll be Australia and West Indies. Sorry, Australia West Indies on Tuesday, South Africa England on Thursday, and the final will be next Sunday. So by this time next week, we will know who has won the Women's World Cup, and if it's not Australia, then I agree that Jofra Archer should be Test captain.
Oh God! Come on, South Africa, England, Windies, you can do this. It's your time.
Lovely. Right. So I think that is the main kind of cricket news covered. Just seen some breaking news that Everton Hussain have now also chipped in to say that Root should no longer be England captain. Interesting. But yeah, I think the other news, I thought I sent you the video earlier of Wood after his surgery. It's aesthetic, completely like it's a guy. It should definitely go on. Yeah, Wood's Instagram profile. There's about 8 different videos of him just completely out of it after his elbow surgery. I think my favourite bit is when he's talking about the IPL. Then after about 10 seconds of silence, just starts going, lollipop, lollipop, ooh, lollipop. It's great. Love it. Definitely would check that out. But yeah, have you got any news?
I do not have any news.
Okay. No problem. Well, we'll cover all of the IPL stuff next episode. So I think the last thing then today then is to head over to your corner. I don't know if you're sitting in a corner, might be sitting somewhere else. But we're going to go to Jamie's corner for It's Just Not Cricket, I believe.
And we don't want to talk about cricket anymore. We don't want to rant and criticize cricket anymore. We want to
I'm tired.
rant and criticize Lord of the Rings of Power.
Ah, we do.
Yeah.
Do
So,
we?
it was Tolkien Reading Day a couple of days ago.
Oh, it was, wasn't it? Yeah.
And it was just occurred to me, I started rereading The Lord of the Rings again because of that. And it just got me thinking about the Rings of Power TV show and like concerns we might have with it, or if there's anything from the promo material that they've released that have offered some hope that it might be decent. So is there a major concern you have and or a major hope that you've seen from the material that's been released so far?
What do I like from the material so far?
It's just like talking about England.
It is. You know what? What I really liked, the first image we saw, I feel it was like months ago, not the trailer, but there was the picture of, is it the Undying Lands, I think?
Yeah.
Was that? Yeah, I think that imagery, when I first saw that, I was like, okay, cool. This could be amazing. To kind of really visualize that in that way, it just looked like a real kind of model, looked fantastic, looked very kind of Peter Jackson-y vibes. I was really kind of, I'm on board with this. This looked great. Then they released all those character posters, didn't they? And there was a few kind of cosplay ones, definitely, that came to fruition straight away. Came to light. Wasn't sure about those, but then obviously the trailer release. But it's not really a trailer. It's just, I think my main point is what I said to you when it came out. If you took away all the text that said Lord of the Rings or the Fellowship or whatever, no one could tell you that was anything to do with Tolkien or Lord of the Rings. And I think that's the fundamental issue at the moment I have. I think the castings, I've got no real problems with the casting, I don't think. I think that's all fairly solid from the actors I know. But yeah, it doesn't feel Lord of the Ringsy really in the slightest to me.
Like the only two things that I feel are sort of related to Lord of the Rings, there's I think Howard Shore is doing the soundtrack.
Okay, I didn't know
for the show. I think it is. It's either doing the soundtrack for this or War of the Rohirrim, the anime film, but I think it's for the show. And some of the settings did look kind of Ringsy-esque, from taking sort of inspiration from Peter Jackson's trilogy. So like the bits in Numenor.
Yeah.
I think we saw Rivendell in the teaser. Like some of the settings look kind of cool. But, like general sort of materialistic things like the elf's hair or the dwarf princess not having beards or whatever, like those are tiny things, but it makes you sort of, it jars you a bit from the whole lore of it.
Sure, yeah.
And my biggest concern is the massive compression of the timeline, especially when they're dealing with the fall of Numenor. So, where the men of Numenor have to deal with their mortality and become like disenfranchised, and they basically denounce the gods and fuck the elves off because the elves never die, and there's a big disparagement between those two factions, and you don't get that from a couple of 100 years when the men are living like 100 to 150 years. Anyway, if you get that sort of over a longer period, you see where you've got characters that maintain through that narrative in the elves, and that's your common thread, that's your thing that the audience will latch onto, and then you'll get the men dying and you get their point of view about how this kind of sucks and that they want some immortality for themselves, and that sort of just breaks the story up a bit.
Yeah, no, I think so. I mean, I think your Tolkien lore is much greater than mine. But Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I just would have loved something in this trailer to really get you excited. Just a lot of this is just feels like just extensions of the posters. There's doesn't there's yeah there's no I was just expecting there's going to be a little glimpse of the forging of the ring or something, or of a ring. It's called the Rings of Power, and there's not even the ring in the trailer.
Yeah, like, can you tell what's going to happen in this story based on what they've
No.
given us? Like, I have no idea.
Yeah.
Like,
No. I mean,
Galadriel's off doing something. Um, there's a
Galadriel looks weird with a sword, doesn't she? It just doesn't really feel.
Yeah, I think her armor is part of the sort of cosplay-ish. It looks too pristine. Like, I know the elves are meant to be proper good craftsmen, but it just looks very
Just
perfect.
also just feels weird to me because Galadriel being such a powerful character, I guess, in all senses, being of the high standing of the elves that she is, but she's powerful in her own right, and I don't think just giving her a sword really improves or embarks on that. Do you know what I mean? Like, I feel like
Yeah, like
yeah,
in the earlier ages, like, she's old as anything in the show at this time in the lore. She has been known to fight with weaponry when she's had to, I
okay,
think.
yeah, sure,
But, like, my issue with Galadriel is that she's being considered a main character, when even in the Silmarillion, she was a bit more of a mysterious figure, and she would pop up every now and then, and that's how she was utilized in The Lord of the Rings as well.
yeah,
And
yeah,
that's all a part of her character. Like, say with the Joker, for instance, like, part of
right,
his character is not knowing why he's a complete lunatic.
yeah, absolutely.
Like, you just lose the mystique of the character when you learn more about them, and that just completely destroys what made them special in the first place.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think whenever you do kind of prequels or anything like that, that it is really something that comes to the fore, isn't it? That there is these characters that people love because of the stuff you've seen and what you already know about them. You don't need so much backstory to justify why you like them as a character. There's definitely a lot of prequel stuff at the moment, or for nostalgia bait, that really does tap into that kind of stuff. Um, but I think I for all the Lord of the Rings fans, I do forget her name, but as far as I remember, I think she was in the Dark Materials. All the stuff I've seen, I think she's good. I think she's got quite an elvish face, so I think that she works in that regard. Um, Elrond's hair is weird.
Oh my, it's just a mullet. He's like Billy
It
Ray
is a mullet.
Cyrus elf. It's
Yeah.
very strange.
I was just expecting, obviously they cast someone, but I was just expecting him to be a younger Isildur. But only basically because I still picture him as the young Ned Stark from Game of Thrones. So I only kind of see him in that sense. So seeing him as an elf also feels quite weird, because it sounds weird. It does sound strange, but I feel like you casting people. You are casting for an elvish vibe, like you look at Lord of the Rings, all the elven characters. You're like, oh yeah, you're an elf. But like this guy, I'm like, you look like you want to be an elf, but you look like a guy with just ears. I don't know. It sounds nonsense to talk about,
Yeah,
but like I think certain
this is
actors
what the
have.
segment is. This is the nonsense segment.
It is just not cricket. I bet elves that wouldn't play cricket. You could have a timeless test match of elves and it would literally last eternity.
That would be great. Oh, man, who would I want to open out of elves?
Good pick. I don't know. I mean, they've obviously been working on this a long, long time. And from all the people behind the scenes, it's made by people who obviously love the franchise. Hate calling it a franchise. Love the Lord of the Rings. um, I just, I don't know. I think if you don't have a fundamental story to go on, and you're making up a lot of it, why? When you've got so much material you can go on to and
I mean,
use.
Do you know which books they've got the rights to?
Please enlighten me.
It's just Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. So
Ah,
for this Second Age show, they can only use from the appendices of the Lord of the Rings, basically.
right. I see. Okay.
I think they can go to the Tolkien estate and be like, can we use this from the Silmarillion or Unfinished Tales? And they can be like, sure. And I don't think
Right.
they can go against the canon as well. So they're in a really difficult situation with what they can actually write. They don't have much source material to go on, and they have to ask for permission to use other source material that they don't have the rights for. It's
From a writing perspective, I'd imagine. I'm not saying I'm a writer that's writing for a TV show, Christ, but from their writing perspective, what I can imagine happening is that they will write in a ton of new characters that will have literally no impact on the overall plot. None of the Fall of Numenor or the Forging Rings or Sauron. There'll be a whole host of new characters that will be just in there as filler. They just live in this world, but don't have any impact on what happens. I can imagine a lot of that. That's the wormhole that they can get into, or loophole, should I say, that completely tries to get around the Tolkien estate. I'd imagine that's what I think is going to be the case.
yeah. I think a lot of the teaser was teasing those sort of characters, like there's supposedly an elf human like romance or going on. You've got
Can't wait.
the band of hobbits that God knows what they're gonna get up to. Like I could not tell you what any of the storylines are going to be for the first series, and I know what's meant to happen.
I don't know. Yeah. So, in your first early question, do I have hope? I'd hope so. My problem is a lot of the franchises that I love or have loved have just. I'm going to put England cricket into this. Have just got bad over time. Like Harry Potter, at the moment in the state of it is, I think it's in the worst possible state that could possibly be in. There's a new film, Secrets of Dumbledore, coming out in less than a week, whatever, and I could not give any monkeys about that whatsoever. And it's on course to be the lowest grossing Harry Potter thing ever, so I can't wait for that. And then obviously England cricket, and I just don't want Lord of the Rings to fall into the same trap, because the films, the extended editions, the books a little bit are things I hold quite dear, and I love them a lot, and I think they will always be my favorite films. And I guess at the end of the day, there'll always be those, and I don't think anything from this show will ever tarnish that. It's just whether or not they can add to Tolkien's world and offer anything of value, and I think that is the question at the moment, whether it's going to be, again, any good. Is it going to provide anything to us that we're going to be like, I'm glad that I've now got this as well as the films or as well as the books?
Yeah,
I'm not sure whether or not it does.
Yeah, like we've had bad adaptations with The Shadow of Mordor, the sequel game, where they made Isildur into a Nazgul and Shelob turned into a sexy lady for,
of course.
reasons.
Yeah.
Like there have been bad adaptations in this lore. I'm not going to call it a franchise because that word.
Whenever I talk about anything kind of owned overall by Warner Brothers, I just automatically go straight to franchise.
Oh, for sure. Like, I think I'm kind of thinking of this show as just at this point, a fantasy show with Lord of the Rings aesthetic slapped on. Like, in its own right, the films are very different from the books as well. So they can all sort of exist within their own separate stratosphere. So I don't think the books and the films really, to say they don't interact with each other is wrong, but I don't think one negates the other. Whereas this kind of feels in its own space away from everything else. It doesn't feel connected.
No, Yeah, I'd agree. I'd agree with that. It
And
does feel very tonally different for sure.
yeah, and that makes it easier for when it is potentially shit. It might be good.
Yeah.
For me not to mind about it because there's other good stuff already out there.
Yeah, I mean, the pessimist in me says it's better to go into something with, less hope and then to be surprised rather than go in to be like, this is going to be the greatest thing ever, and then I'll be. But we'll see. I do hope it's good because I love Middle Earth and Tolkien and all that kind of world. I will feel some kind of detachment from Peter Jackson's kind of Middle Earth that he created, but we'll see. I mean, fingers crossed. But yeah, got some hope. That's pretty much all I can say. But yeah, I think we are just reaching the end of our normal allotted time. I mean, we could come back to Lord of the Rings again in the future. I'd happily talk about Lord of the Rings for ages. But I'm also aware that we talked a long time about England cricket being bad.
Oh, don't worry. I have more Lord of the Rings stuff to talk about.
Fantastic. So that will come up again, I'm sure, in part 2 of Just Not Cricket. But yeah, we'll see you next time. And next time we'll obviously know that who will run the Women's World Cup, which could be exciting to see. Might have more news about who's going to be England's next Test captain, but it's still going to be Root. All this and more to find out next time. Any other stuff from you, Jamie?
Vote for Jofra Archer as England captain 2022.
Please note, it's Just Not Cricket does not endorse that unless Australia do lose the Women's World Cup.
No, we endorse it. We all endorse it.